All right, everybody. I guess we're going to go ahead and begin. We'll just do some intros. Thank you so much for registering today for this second part of the Healthy Relationship Series webinar. My name is Sabrina. I'm the program coordinator for NAMI Lubbock. For those of you who may not be familiar with NAMI, we are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and there are multiple affiliate chapters throughout the state. And so we are the local chapter here. And so we're just hosting this webinar, and Mrs. Kathryn Wagner is going to be the speaker for this series. And she has a master's degree in couple marriage and family therapy from Texas Tech. And she's also a first-year doctoral student and primary instructor at Tech in the couple marriage and family therapy program. Her research emphasis includes IPV, trauma, infidelity in couple relationships, as well as mental health in the physician population. She's currently an LMFT associate, and she's supervised by Dr. Dane Eggleston. And she also has her own private practice in Lubbock, Texas. I think she's going to pop that into the chat. It's called Sarah Nova Therapy. You can go to sarahnovatherapy.com to check out her private practice. So I will let her take it away and kind of let her talk to us about what she's going to present to us today. Thanks so much for presenting to us today, Kathryn.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm happy to be back for the second part of this series. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for the introduction. I'm going to pop in the chat my email. That way, if after the presentation you want slides, or there's another little handout that I created a while back that I don't mind sharing with any of you guys about one of the topics we're going to discuss today. So feel free. Can't talk and type at the same time today, but feel free to reach out to me, even if it's not about this stuff. If you have any other questions in addition, I don't mind answering anything or pointing you guys in any right directions that you need to go. Okay, see if I can get this shared again. Okay, all right. So just like last time, once I press this present button, it's very difficult for me to be able to see any questions you guys might have. I can't see the chat. So I've built in a few places to ask questions just like last time. Oops, I don't know why I didn't start at the beginning. I built in a few places for questions just like the last presentation. If you have any questions between those, feel free to pop it in the chat or get Sabrina's attention and she could just holler at me, or you can unmute if that option is available. And if I hear someone talking, I'll probably stop. So that should be how we work it. So today I'm going to be talking about the characteristics of healthy relationships. This is part one. So our next presentation, I believe, is on December 12th, but don't quote me because I don't have the calendar in front of me. That will go, a continuation of this presentation. I will go into more depth about specific skills with that one. I begin that at the end of this presentation, but these two will be tied together. Today, I'm going to give a wrap up of intimate partner violence. Last time, I like to talk, so we got cut a little bit short. So I just wanted to be able to touch on verbal abuse, the cycle of violence, and give some community resources that I didn't get to speak on last time. And then I will be talking about some of the bigger couple therapy theories. By no means do I give an extensive list of any therapy models that every single therapist might use. I just kind of picked the three that are most popular and one that I primarily practice with and I'm trained in. Just to give an idea for you guys to have what therapists are looking for in a theory of health, like what is healthy in a relationship. And each different therapy model has a slightly different idea. Most of them are similar, but just so that way you guys have an idea. And then towards the end, we will go into some of the first three components of healthy relationships. I'll give some examples of what activities or skills you can build. If we have time today, I don't know. Like I said, I like to talk. Last time we got not all the way through. So if we're in that same boat, I will put the link in the chat for the activity and you can complete it on your own. It has steps. But if we have time, I don't mind doing it today. Just like last time, this is something I do with all the students in the CARS 2300 course that I teach at Texas Tech. I like to begin class with a pre-writing activity. So take the next 1 to 2 minutes and write down about two things that either you hope to gain from this presentation, either two things you hope to gain, two questions that you might have about the topic, or maybe two reasons why you registered for this webinar.
Kathryn, as they're wrapping that up, I'm just going to let them know that everybody's muted right now. So if you have any questions as she's going, you can pop them in the chat and I'll let her know. And then during the designated space times where she has just time for questions, I'll unmute. And so you'll be able to ask her directly.
Perfect. Also, I did forget to mention, my puppy isn't here with me, so if my chair starts moving one direction, not powered by a ghost, just a 4-month-old puppy wandering around the room. All right. Feel free to continue if you're not done with them, but we're going to get moving along. Today's objectives, I want you guys to leave here today being able to identify what verbal abuse looks like. What are some different categories of verbal abuse? I feel like a lot of these examples that I'm about to give are, I'm guilty of it too, are things that we might do on a daily basis or a weekly basis, whether it's in our intimate relationships or friend relationships, and we don't even recognize that doing that over and over and over again would classify as verbal abuse. So that's a big thing that I want you guys to leave here today understanding. I also want you guys to leave here today developing a foundational understanding of what the cycle of violence is. I want you guys to be able to identify the major couples therapies model and what maybe the theory of health is for what a healthy relationship is. And then lastly, I want you guys to begin to demonstrate a thorough understanding of some of these components of healthy relationships and how to take active steps for yourself to start meeting some of these. All right. Moving on along to our wrap up for IPV. So, types of verbal abuse. This comes from The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans. It's a book. It's fairly inexpensive. I believe it's maybe $10 or $12 on Amazon. It might be cheaper Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals. Who knows? It's a fantastic book. I can't remember if this is an updated version that I have, but I can't remember when it was written. So some things might be a little bit antiquated with today, but overall, pretty good read. And so all of these different categories of verbal abuse are going to be coming from this book. If you want to get this book and have any more questions, in the bottom right hand corner of the slide, that's what what is it called? The cover of the book looks like. So I also have a sheet that I created that also has examples of what this might sound like. If that's something that you're interested in, reach out with that email. I don't mind making it into a PDF and sending that out too, because those examples can definitely be helpful. I'll go through these at a pretty good pace, but I won't go into too much detail because I feel like this could be a whole webinar in and of itself talking about this topic. So I'll go over them, but maybe not in a lot of detail. So if you feel like you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and Sabrina will stop me. So this first category is withholding, and this is keeping your thoughts, feelings, hopes, really anything that has to do with yourself to yourself, and remaining silent towards a partner and revealing as little as possible. So This might be shutting down a conversation, like, you don't even know what I'm thinking. You have no idea what this feels like, instead of actively trying to explain it, helping your partner understand what you're going through. And just like everything, a certain level of things are healthy, but if we're doing this every single time we're talking about thoughts, feelings, sharing nothing with our partner, that might be a way that people perpetuate abuse, limiting the connection on one end, but maybe even expecting a connection back, and not giving the connection to a partner, but expecting them to share everything. The next is countering, and this is when your partner denies reality and closes off all discussion on a topic. So I think the term nowadays is gaslighting. This is basically what that gaslighting term, I feel like they're one and the same. And this is just if you are, explaining what your emotional experience is, what you're going through, how you perceive something, and they are consistently shutting you down, saying that's not how it happened. You don't feel that way. We're not even going to be discussing this. Then we have discounting. This is very similar to countering, but this is maybe more minimizing than gaslighting. And all it is putting your partner down by denying or distorting their partner's perception. So this might look very, very similar, but maybe this is saying, no, it happened like this. Instead of closing off a discussion, they're willing to have a discussion. However, trying to maybe manipulate the sense of reality that one partner is having. Then we have verbal abuse disguised as jokes. This one can be very tricky, because maybe we are in a relationship where we take jabs at each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we are consistently being critical of each other as a joke, then that can really wear over time. Then there's blocking and diverting, and that's when one partner controls a discussion by withholding some topics to discuss. So maybe we go into one part of a conversation and a partner wants to deepen that specific topic or talk about, a specific aspect of that topic, and that other partner is just unwilling to do that. Then we have accusing and blaming, and this can be blaming your partner or blaming another partner for your own action. So, well, I did that because you said this, or it's your fault. This can also be blaming for emotions, like, well, I just feel just so sad and you made me feel this way. If a partner maybe talked about something that they wish would change in the relationship, and someone saying, well, you're breaking my heart by saying that. That's not very productive, and doing that to a certain extent can absolutely be abusive in a sense. And then we have judging and criticizing. I didn't really put the definition for this one because it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is when maybe one partner is going to be really critical of the other partner and everything that they're doing, maybe what they're wearing, maybe I just have this in my head because this is in the data that I'm analyzing right now for a paper, but saying that certain partners' outfit choices make them look emo and stupid, it's very critical, or being critical of the way towels are folded, unloading the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher, you name it, can be little to big things. There's a lot of these, so we're almost through them. Then we have trivializing, and this is also very similar to that countering and discounting, and that's just making what your partner expresses insignificant, like, it's not even a big deal. Why are you making a big deal out of this? We have undermining, which is withholding emotional support and eroding confidence and determination. So if somebody's really struggling with something, maybe we go behind their back and talk about how, I just can't believe they're incompetent, to a friend that's a mutual friend within the relationship. We have threatening. This is manipulating your partner with fear. And this can be financial threatening, like, well, if you do this, I'm going to take away the car because I paid for the car. This can be physical, threat of physical abuse. This can be a threat of, utilizing children as leverage. You name it. If you are fearful in a relationship, it's probably because a threat has been made or an ultimatum has been made that would violate your sense of safety and security. We have name calling. I feel like this often comes up with verbal abuse that's disguised as jokes, but any non-endearing term that we're using to refer to each other, you're stupid, you're an idiot, all those kinds of things. We have intentionally forgetting. And it's one thing if someone maybe has ADHD in the relationship and they truly forgot to do something, and they don't mean any harm by it. But then there's also instances where someone is intentionally not remembering to put, a priority on their partner. It is somebody who is intentionally not doing something that their partner is asking them to do. Maybe they had a conversation about, hitting on a girl at the bar is cheating, and the partner routinely is continuing to do it in front of the other partner. And they say, oh, well, I didn't remember we had that conversation. I have no idea what you're talking about. That would probably be more intentionally forgetting than maybe one partner saying, can you take the trash out before I get home? The other partner getting busy with their day, completely leaving their mind. Even though that can still be very frustrating. Then we have ordering, and this is denying equality and autonomy to your partner in a relationship. Think about holding something over a lot. It has to do with manipulation here. Not seeing each other as equals, like you can't leave because then you'll have nothing, be nothing, all those kinds of things. And then denial. And again, this is really similar to some of those that we talked about at the beginning. And this is just denying your partner's reality. So again, if you want any what it might sound like, what it might be like, feel free to reach out. I'll give you that sheet, or you can, purchase the book. It's very inexpensive and it's pretty good. That was a lot. We have time for questions here really soon because I knew that was going to be a lot. So we're going to briefly go over the cycle of violence. And I know I have a lot of words on here. It was more maybe for you guys to have as a reference because I really liked this chart. All that I really want you guys to know is that there's a 3-phase model for the cycle of violence. And usually I say it starts, there's really no start point, but when the relationship initiates, there's usually this honeymoon phase, and that's how somebody gets drawn into a violent relationship. And then after the honeymoon phase wears out, then we maybe have our first tension building cycle where there's the nitpicking, the withdrawing affection, putting each other down, destroying property could be something that happens. And a lot of the times the victim tries to reason, tries to do anything they can because they know that maybe an acute explosion is going to occur. And this is maybe that big event of violence, could be physical, verbal, or sexual. Like I'm missing a category. But then once that happens, you have an abuser who is maybe overtly just so apologetic, this will never happen again. And then we enter the honeymoon phase again, and everything's good and great, and the victim gets drawn back in. Maybe it won't happen again. And then inevitably we start over at the tension building, and the cycle just continues and continues. We talked about in the last lecture this idea that, as humans, we like homeostasis, we like what we know, even if it's unhealthy, we just know what to expect, we know how to react, so we continue to do it. And that's why you might see a lot of victims of domestic violence going back to those relationships, because even though, they know it's harmful for them, maybe they were successfully able to get out of a previous one, it's what they know. They know how to react, that tension building, to diffuse any kind of conflict. And other things might seem foreign, scary, and unknown. And so maybe they get into a different relationship or go back to a previous abuser. This one's just really quick. This is just resources. And then afterwards, I'll give you guys a space to ask any questions you might have on any of that. But Women's Protective Services is really great. I have the phone number for that on here. The THHS Family Violence Program is really great. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence and they might be in need of a lawyer, Lubbock has, I think it's 2 legal aid offices, one Northwest and one North. I can't remember where they are, but there's 2 offices. And then there's the Legal Aid Society of Lubbock that also can offer some guidance. I think there's 2 legal aid offices. I might be wrong on that. And then we have the Voice of Hope, which is yet again another place where victims of domestic violence can go for support. I put Family Promise on here because it's something that I was familiar with back when I was an elementary teacher. And this is a really great program that helps individuals who might be homeless or struggling with resources get on their feet. I believe, don't quote me on this, I haven't looked at their website in a few days, but I think it's 3 months. They'll try to find temporary housing. And I believe it's free of cost to that individual if you end up getting accepted into the program. That way you can save up 3 months of your earnings. They'll help you find a job if that's something you don't have, and you have kind of this little money pot to get back on your feet. And then of course we have the domestic violence hotline, but that's the national domestic violence hotline. And I do know that their website, like if you just press X, like it'll close the tab really quickly. So that way, you know, if someone's being in the victim situation and the abuser walks in, it's just one button and not like, you know, scrolling around and trying to exit that out. By no means do I think that this might be an exhaustive list of what's available in Lubbock, but these are really good places to start. I know that a lot of churches in the area do a lot to help out victims of domestic violence or just in any other tough situations. So feel free, if you guys have other resources, share them with each other in the chat. The more the merrier, I feel like, with resources in this town, because there's definitely not as much here as there is in some of the bigger metroplexes. All right, finally, questions. Any questions you guys might have?
And you all are unmuted, so you can just shout them out or you can put it in the chat. All right, I guess you explained it so well, there's no questions.
I guess everybody's at a loss for words. Maybe overwhelmed is probably more what's happening. Like, whoa, I
Yeah.
just got hit with all of these categories. Feel free, if something comes up later in the presentation about all of that stuff, you can ask those questions later too. Or if something comes up after, you know, after today when we leave, then you can reach out to me for any. But if we have no questions, I don't mind just rolling. All right. So characteristics of healthy relationships, starting with couples therapy theories, what, you know, therapists are taught in school, counselors are taught in school, who are the leading names, all that fun stuff. So I'm going to be going over 3 different models. The Gottman method, which is, I'm trained in the Gottman method. I love the Gottman method. It's very evidence-based for couples therapy. They do really good stuff. They have a lot of good resources, not only for clinicians, but they write, I would say, like a lot of their books are actually aimed towards the client perspective, or they have a clinician version and a client version, and you guys can work through them together. They have this really neat tool called the relationship checkup. I think it's like 39 or 40 bucks. I don't mandate it, but I strongly encourage couples to complete that, because I have a portal where I send the assessment to them. They go through it, and then I'm able to see the results based on, you know, some of the things they're struggling with within the relationship, and it's super thorough. But they do a really great job. So I probably have the most information on that one just because that's what I use. I'm a little biased, I'll admit it. But I also use a lot of techniques from emotionally focused therapy, and that's another big one that a lot of couples therapists use. That one has to do a lot more with vulnerable experiences and the interaction cycles that are going on and trying to change them from negative to positive. I'll definitely go into those. I use their techniques a lot as well, but maybe not in as much detail as I will be with the Gottman method. And then last one, commitment and acceptance therapy. I feel like that's just another common one that I hear a lot of other therapists using. I don't use it very much, but it's still valuable for sure. So I'll go into that one. And if you have any other questions about any additional models, feel free to ask them at the end of this section, or you can, you know, pop an email to me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find some answers or point you in the direction of someone who is a little bit more knowledgeable about the question if I don't know. Okay. So we have the Gottman method. The Gottman method is based on what's called the Sound Relationship House, which I'm going to show you a picture of in a second. But essentially the model is broken into about 3 big parts. And the first part is creating friendship in the relationship. This is fostering kindness and really establishing we are friends with each other. We like each other. We are fond of each other. We appreciate each other. Not necessarily at that beginning stages are we going into super romance and passion and vulnerability just yet in this model. Then the model moves into steps that have to do with managing conflict. And this is something that I absolutely love. This is why I use this model over other models more often. And it's that a lot of couples therapy models teach therapists to teach clients how to resolve conflict. And that's great. I think conflict resolution skills are absolutely needed. However, Gottman and his wife, they're Gottman and Gottman, they're the ones who founded the Gottman method. They've done a lot of research into just couple conflict in general, and about 69% of things that couples fight about are unresolvable issues that the couple cannot change. And that's a healthy majority of what couples are arguing about is things that cannot be changed. So they also teach conflict resolution, but after they teach conflict management. So they help couples identify what is something we can change, what is something that, almost picking your battles, like what is something we can actively work on, find a solution to. That's what we're going to work on. And we're going to develop maybe self-soothing skills, emotional regulation skills, learn how to turn towards each other and support each other on things that, we can't change. Maybe it doesn't even have to do with the relationship, but it's affecting the relationship. Like the IRS, I feel like is my example for that one. But I just love that idea because I mean, I'm married, and I definitely see that trend in my own marriage of us arguing about things that are not likely to be solved by either of us, and it really does eat up a lot of the interactions that we can have if we let it. And the whole Gottman method is based on this premise that every five positive interactions is equivalent to one negative interaction. So if we're having just one argument and it's about something unresolvable, we need 5 positive interactions to be able to like balance it out and feel satisfied within the relationship. And that starts to become really, really difficult when we are constantly arguing about something that cannot be resolved. So they teach manage conflict, something that can be resolved or is a perpetual issue that can find a solution we can work through. That's what we work on. Everything else, we figure out how to lean in, support each other through it. And then the ending of this model, or the later stage goals, there's creating shared meaning, shared goals in the relationship. And these are a little bit, I think of it as more of like a meta concept of like, what is this relationship definition? What is it about? What are our goals? How are we growing together individually? What are goals for the marriage, our life? All those kind of great things. Are we fostering romance, passion, all that kind of stuff, getting in deeper and being able to keep that long term. So these are the 4 horsemen. This is my favorite little, I guess, should I call it a gift? It doesn't move, flyer, whatever you want to call it. But the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I'm pretty sure that's a biblical reference. But in the Gottman method, these 4, I guess, constructs are some of the highest predictors of divorce. I think it's like Gottman asserts that within 92%, I think it's 92%, like 92% certainty, if these are present, not being worked on, that it is a predictor of relationship dissolution or divorce. And these are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. I think some of these we definitely have already talked about with that verbal abuse category, but criticism is nitpicking at your partner and the way that they do things. Contempt is, I just think, all in all, not liking your partner, being angry with your partner, even for little things, no opportunity to like want to get to know them, join with them, find resolutions. Then we have defensiveness, and it's always answering something with, well, it's your fault, or I didn't mean it, or all that kind of stuff. And it's a type of blame is what defensiveness is, but it's not taking accountability or even just, acknowledging the reality of a partner. And then this stonewalling horseman is, I believe, don't quote me on this, I'm like 98% certain, is one of the deadliest horsemen, deadliest, quote unquote. And this is just really indifferent, shutting down, disengaging from the relationship. And that's very, very difficult to come back from, and can lead to the death of a relationship. And so these are a very important concept within the Gottman method. These are one of the biggest things that Gottman says, we need to attune to these very early, and we need to get rid of them, or else, they can mean doom for the relationship. This is that sound relationship house that I was speaking upon earlier, I really thought that it would be clearer. It's a little grainy, but their whole theory is based on the idea, we're building a house, we're building a relationship house. And the foundations of the house, the walls of this house holding up the roof are trust and commitment. Without those, it's very, very difficult to even, build the floors of this house. So we need to make sure trust and commitment are there before we can start at the bottom floor. Then we move into the bottom floor. This is building love maps. And all this really is that the Gottman research found that emotionally intelligent couples are really familiar with each other's lives, their stressors. They have just a really rich, detailed perception of their partner, their worldview, the things, the important information that's going on in their lives, all that kind of stuff. So that is what they say, that's their first floor. That's what we do first. Once we have built love maps, we are really developing that intimate understanding of our partner. Then we're going to share fondness and admiration. And this just represents that, this is a place of protection. This is a place that is positive. We are, getting rid of maybe some of that contempt. We are trying to get rid of just overall negative sentiments toward the relationship. We are building a culture of appreciation. We are practicing being appreciative of each other. We are practicing maybe even admiring each other out loud, like saying what we like about each other, all that kind of warm and fuzzy good stuff. And this is a friendship skill. It doesn't always have to be something that's super romantic. It can just be, I like that you're funny, those little moments like that. Once we've built that, then we go into turning towards instead of turning away. And this is when what's called a bid for connection, when someone's trying to reach out, maybe share vulnerability, share a little bit about themselves, ask for attention or affection, or even affirmation. A lot of times in unhealthy relationships, those are maybe shut down or they're not caught. The bid is not taken and we don't do anything with it. We don't try to re-engage again. So the Gottman method here is just, we are accepting our bids for connection. We are maybe re-attempting the bid if it's not, I guess, accepted the first time. In general, women make more bids for connection than men do. But in healthy relationship, both partners are making bids. The other partner is accepting these bids for connection, and they are turning towards each other to talk about affection, attention, affirmation, all those great warm and fuzzy things. So those first 3 floors of this sound relationship house is that friendship portion that I told you this model is broken up into 3. Oh, and the positive perspective, which goes into what I just said. So it's 4, sorry. Then the managing conflict is that, I guess, teal is the color of the house. And this is where we are accepting our partner's influence. We recognize that we are different people. We have different personality. We are going into we have a positive sentiment override. We like each other. We also understand that we are different people, but that this person is not an adversary. Just because that their perception might be different, the way they might solve a problem might be different, doesn't mean that they are against us. They are just a different person. And so that's what we're talking about with accepting your partner's influence, not that they're making decisions for you, that we understand their perspective, we respect where they're coming from, maybe even talking about the background of the experiences they've had in their life that has brought them to this place. And we say, we accept that's where you're coming from. We are bringing that information in when we are dialoguing about a problem. When we dialogue about a problem, again, going back to that managing instead of resolving, we're talking about, is this something that we can solve? Goes back to, are we doing a resolvable or an unresolvable problem here? And then if it's something resolvable, then we both have our influence, our opinions, our way that we think this should be solved. And we are using both of those as information to work together instead of trying to figure out which person is right or which way to manage this is right. We are accepting that both ways are, some ways, I mean, maybe more right than others. If we're talking about, should we pay a bill or should we not pay a bill? Maybe we should pay a bill. but essentially, one partner isn't more right than the other. We have opinions, and we're using both opinions to dialogue about a problem and using both to inform how we work together to make a solution. And then, like I said earlier, whenever it's an unresolvable problem or something that even might be resolvable but really emotionally charged, we are learning self-soothing skills. The Gottman method, I have them. I use them sometimes in couples therapy, like the little pulse oximeters to calculate the heart or track the heart rate during session. If your heart rate's going over 100 beats per minute in a conversation with your spouse, you will begin to be emotionally flooded. You will begin to have reactions that maybe you don't want to have, that are charged with a lot of emotion, and your rational thinking is going to go down. So the Gottman method really says, let's practice self-soothing skills. Let's get ourselves to a calm, safe space. We're going to take negotiated timeouts when needed because those are proven to be helpful. They have structure. They're 20 minutes. You have 3 things that you should be doing. It's not just, we're not going to talk about it until a later date. We definitely have a very structure for taking a timeout. We're getting back to a calmer state, and we're re-engaging to dialogue about the problem as many times as we need to do that cycle. And then we are also, coming at things in a positive and respectful way. We're not starting off with a criticism. We're starting off, hey, I'm really having trouble with this. Can we, process through this together and figure out if it's something we can solve together? So that's that second part. It's kind of beefy in that managed conflict place. And then those last 2, the make life dreams come true and creating shared meaning. Those are maybe those later stage goals, just really deepening. What do we want this marriage? What do we want this relationship to mean? What are our next steps? What are our goals? What are our individual goals? How do we support each other on meeting those? How do we use our skills to meet relationship goals? All of those good things. So this is the Gottman method. What they say is how we should treat people, what all, we should do to make them have a healthy relationship once they're leaving therapy. I have on here bids for connection. These are just some examples because I feel like that's not a term that maybe not everybody will know. But these are just some minor examples of things. So bids for connection can be very, very big about some big emotional trigger, or maybe some big traumatic experience that's never been discussed, but they can also be small, like, hey, do you want to go get a snow cone with me? Or, hey, do you want to go to Ulta? Or, something small or big, either or. But I just thought I would add this. Okay. Do we have any questions? I'm going to pull up, I wanted to go back to that so that way you could ask your questions while looking at it, because I'm a very visual person. So time for questions.
And you're still unmuted, so you can say them out loud or you can pop them in the chat.
I won't bite. Maybe.
It's a
Man,
quiet
did I do
bunch.
it again?
They're there, but no questions.
I guess the investment for that training, I really did well with that. Just kidding.
Yeah, we can all practice the Gottman method now after that. After that
Right?
session.
I am an official trainer. No, I'm not. I am not an official trainer. However, I really love this method. I think that, I mean, you watched, if any of you have seen Hope Springs or any other just TV show, movie that has couples therapy. I love having vulnerable encounters with my couple clients. I think that really builds a lot of meat in their relationship and helps them become closer. But realistically speaking, I don't know, maybe this just comes from personal relationships or just personality, who knows? I just think the Gottman method is really practical. Relationships do not happen in the context of a fairy tale movie. They happen in the context of a world that has a lot going on, that is very stressful. And I just love that they really have put it in that context and not this always mushy, always talking about how we're going to be super deep and vulnerable, because that's not what it looks like all the time in a marriage, in a relationship that's long term at all. All right. Well, if we have no questions about Gottman, we'll move on to EFT. So, emotionally focused therapy was pioneered by Sue Johnson with the help of Les Greenberg, but I think he was her advisor whenever she was in graduate school. And then after working on the model together, I think they had a falling out because he has a model called emotion focused therapy that is extremely similar to this, but diverges in some ways. If you are a clinician, I have been told, like, if you're ever in the same room with any of them or any people who are directly trained by them, do not accidentally say emotion focused therapy when you mean emotionally. If there's drama in the MFT field, that is definitely the most current. It happens even at the academic level, apparently. However, this model is focused, its roots are in experiential therapies, which experiential therapies are therapies that really say that the process of the change occurs at the experience level. So there are, I would say 3 or 4 major pathways at any therapy model. One of them is change the way you think, triggers the feelings and doing something different. There are behavioral therapies, which are change the way, like change your behaviors, and then other things will fall into place. We have more insight oriented therapies, like we understand and have insight about ourselves and the way that we work. And then we have experiential therapies, and this is we are experiencing something new. And when we have that information, we change the way we view the world, we change the way we feel about the world and the things that we do. So you guys probably didn't ask and didn't want to know about that, but that's just where experiential is. It's the change occurs in experiencing something new. And for EFT, that experience is an emotional experience. So the goal of therapy, the goal of health is to have corrective emotional experiences. That's what the therapist is trying to help the clients do. And by that, I mean, and this goes into this little attachment section of the slide, that some of these old attachment wounds or these negative emotional experiences that we have, even within or outside of the relationship, are being corrected by having a new emotional experience, having our vulnerability accepted and respected in the therapy room, which now gives us more information that things can be different and we can like work to continue to do those different things. The second, these aren't stages, these are just how this theory began to be developed. I've got a whining dog in the back, I'm sorry. But attachment theory is very, very big in the development of what this theory is. And attachment theory, if you've ever taken Psych 101, you learned it. And this is just that whenever we are born, young children, we develop attachments with our primary caregivers. And our childhood attachments look very different than adulthood attachments because we're not necessarily relying on spouses or friends for survival, as we might be our mother for survival when we are infants. However, they do influence those adult relationships where if, I had a maladaptive attachment to my mother, maybe I have maladaptive attachments to my future husband or the way I react to certain situations. And then the last one is systemic. So both Gottman and EFT are systemic models. And all that that means is that we are looking at things in context and not in isolation. EFT really focuses on what is the interaction cycle? How is partner A doing something that's leading to something that's influencing partner B's behavior? And then when partner B does that behavior, that leads partner A to do a behavior. So in the model, there's like an infinity to where, we have certain steps to where partner A does something and then partner B does something and then goes back to partner A instead of just looking at a linear A to B, if that makes sense. This model is done in 3 stages, 9 steps. If you're a clinician, the first stage really just talks about creating a safe space in therapy, helping the couple identify, like, how are we negatively interactive? What does this cycle look like? And what perpetuates issues? And a big downfall or a place where either newer clinicians or even seasoned clinicians get stuck is the majority of this model is actually spent in that first stage. A lot of therapists who practice with EFT techniques tend to try to rush that stage one, and in doing so, maybe the couple understands the negative interaction cycle, but they're not always identifying it. And unless they have absolutely, without a doubt, know how to frame every single issue in terms of that negative interaction cycle, you should not move on, or you should go back if it occurs later. And so therapists who rush that stage one, it makes it very difficult to build upon that in stage 2 and 3. So stage 1 is identify how we are influencing each other, the negative interaction cycle. Couples are able to say, okay, we are having this argument and this is how it fits in given what our cycle is. Then we move on to stage 2, and that's where we're looking at an introspection and also a reflection of what's going on for our partner. So we are talking about what are our unmet needs. What are those? What are we needing? What are our feelings? How do we name them? All those kinds of things for ourselves. And then we are learning how to accept our partner. And then we are also learning how to express those unmet needs and begin to start focusing on, okay, we're expressing unmet needs, we're having vulnerable encounters in session, but we are also creating a new way to relate, a new emotional experience related to it. And then stage 3 is just creating that new positive interaction cycle, really solidifying it, creating what's called a second order change, which first order change is like doing something different, while second order change is the whole process looks different. We don't just do a different behavior, we are thinking about something differently. We are conceptualizing it and perceiving it differently. And that is a long lasting change versus just, we're going to United instead of Walmart. That's short lived. Maybe Walmart doesn't have something that week, or United doesn't have something that week, and we got to go back. And then, like I said, I do not use acceptance and commitment therapy that often, very rarely. Like, I could probably count on one hand in my clinical experience where I've used these techniques, although they're similar to other things that I do use. But I just know a lot of therapists practice from this model. And all acceptance and commitment therapy is it helps people relate to the experiences that they have inside and the behaviors that they do in a way that fosters, action to do new things, and understanding, what the internal experiences and the way that people behave as the other partner in the relationship are, so that way we know how they're being actionable. And these are the 6 phases of the model: acceptance, diffusion, presentness, using ourself as a context, values, and commitment. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I do not want to misspeak, but I did want you guys to be aware that this is pretty common for therapists to use a lot like it. But I definitely would pass that off to somebody else to explain, because it's not me with my Gottman method. All right. So we have those other 2 models. Any questions come up for those, Gottman or IPV?
Nothing in the chat.
Gosh, I'm just kidding. Not even acceptance and commitment therapy. My whole 30 seconds about a whole. I'm just kidding. All right. Well,
I have questions,
we
but
have
that could.
about. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes, so I don't think we'll do the whole activity, but I'm gonna go ahead and unshare my screen so that way I can pop that link into the chat for this exercise, so that way you guys have it. I will, talk about it a little bit. Okay. So this is the core values exercise. Now I gotta get back to where I was. Oh. I've got a pup that wants to say hi to everybody. Ooh. All right, buddy. We will go into, I picked 3 for today that will be a good introduction, that are components of healthy relationships, things that you can practice, skills that, I often teach clients, especially, starting off in therapy. I did want to start because this got brought up last time in our last little webinar with how to move past unhealthiness. We definitely talked about that homeostasis, like learning what is normal to us and learning that, that unknown, that fear of the unknown, that's natural, but also it's something that maybe we should lean into if we find ourselves in unhealthy relationships often. And ways to move past this unhealthiness and some of those things to identify, reflect upon is understanding what your childhood attachment style might be and putting in the work to move past some of these attachment wounds. So that might be, going into your own individual therapy or, doing some of that internal research, like, why do I react this way? Like, why do I form these types of relationships? Because I think a lot of people try to look at, the last 6 months or the last 2 relationships I have, when a lot of that has to do with just how we came to form attachments with individuals. And that starts very, very early on in our life. So being able to go back there and understand how that informs our current attachment and attachment formation, very, very helpful. Identifying where those attachment wounds might have occurred, also very, very helpful. And then I think the next slide, or maybe in 2 slides, I have those different attachment styles just in case you have never seen them. But like I said, if you were in a Psych 101 class and they didn't teach it, I would be shocked. So attachment theory is a great way to move past unhealthiness, but also dialectical behavioral therapy techniques also are very, very helpful. And that's kind of that 1A bullet point. And I like this one a lot, and that's maybe if you're in an unhealthy relationship or with an unhealthy individual and you feel like you find yourself continuing to go back and you just don't know why, you can't help it. It's usually because you have an unmet need, because unmet needs usually need to be met. So we continue to do undesirable behaviors to meet a need that we were feeling like was unmet. So if we feel like we have no control of our behavior, we don't want to do it, but we continue to do it, it's really, really, really helpful to find out, what might be the need here that I continue to do something that I feel like I don't have control over. And by doing that, then we can try to find alternative ways to meet this need and lessen the need to do that undesirable behavior that we feel like we don't have any control over. Other ways is self-soothing techniques and other emotional regulation skills. When we are feeling our anxiety increase, then maybe we need to take a time out, we need to reflect, we need to go do some self-care, whatever that might be. Other skills are identifying your core values, which I think I briefly touched upon, that those should be serving as a foundation for how we make boundaries, but also practicing making boundaries that support these core values. And then that kind of leads into this development of a self-identity, like, who are we as an individual, what drives us, and what are our goals in life? It was next. So we got our 4 attachment styles. This one on the top left, this is the secure attachment. This is what we should be going for. This is confident, like we believe things should be reciprocal in a relationship. We're not reactive. We've got great emotional regulation skills. We are resilient. If something bad does happen, it's not something that's impacting every single aspect of our life. Maybe we put in a boundary up very quickly. We step away and focus on some of these other things, all that kind of good stuff. These other 3, not that these are horrible, 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 but these other 3 in the top right and those bottom little squares, those are our unhealthy attachment styles. And those are anxious, preoccupied. And I think of this as maybe like the person who is like very naggy or very pursuey, like, hey, do you love me? Do you love me? Are you sure you love me? I saw a funny little meme the other day where it was like somebody texting somebody else. And it was like, do you love me? And then the partner responded with, I married you. And the other partner responded with, yeah, but did you marry me in like a friend way or like a love way? So that's what I think about here, is that person who wakes their partner up at 3 a.m. like, are you sure you love me? And then we have our avoidance, which there's dismissive avoidant, where we're avoiding conflict by dismissing it. And then our fearful avoidant is we are afraid of conflict because we don't know what's going to happen. And so we just avoid it at all costs. Maybe we have some codependency tendencies. So we try to do everything that we can to solve a problem without having to talk about a problem, all that kind of stuff. This is one of the best quotes I feel like I've seen. I don't know, it resonated with me. I don't know where it comes from. I just heard it once and I hold it close to me, and I tell it to a lot of my clients, and I think it's really powerful. So I added it. But it is, you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep someone warm. And if you feel like that, whether it's a friend, family, or even couple relationship, there's something that probably needs to change. If you feel like you're setting yourself on fire just so someone else can, be warm and comfortable, that's not a really healthy way to have a relationship. You're getting burned all over. All right. How to identify core values. I feel like this is extremely important. This is something in my CARS 2300 course that I teach at Tech. I spend a whole day on it with those students because that 18 to 22 range, whether you go to college or not, you're out of the home most likely. You are developing your identity as an adult, what you want your life to look like. And if you don't do the work to put in core to identify your core values, then I see a lot of people like losing themselves or not knowing who they are, not being able to recognize themselves whenever they reach their 30s, 40s, or beyond. I often see this issue come up whenever, I have a lot of female clients who had children 19, 20, 21, 22. And so maybe they weren't even able to do this work to identify their core values because they had another human that depended on them for life and sustenance and whatnot. And so then when they are in their 40s, 50s, whatever it might be, and their children are not out of the house, they feel like they never knew who they were. They've always been a mom their whole life. So I think this is a great thing to even teach teenagers, kids, if you have any. And that link that I put in the chat is just a 5-step way that, you can go through it, figure out what it is, and create actionable core values that you can live by and model your boundaries after. I think that we will talk about how to express clear boundaries in the last slide. There's only 2 left next time because I don't want to rush through those. Those are really, really important. And we have about 2 minutes. So instead of rushing through those, why don't we just, ask any questions that you might have, any comments that you have, or any things that you might want to see in the presentation on December 12th. More than happy to incorporate any of those things that you guys might be here for.
I have a question. So,
Yes.
I with your work with couples, I'm just and learning recently about the Gottman method myself and some other styles of working with couples. What interests me is like, at what point do you start maybe talking with the couple if they've, I guess how are you seeing if maybe the relationship is at a point where separation would be the most healthy thing for them.
Mhm.
And there could be so many reasons behind that, but like kind of
Mhm.
I would love to I don't know if that's in your next one or maybe the last one, but I would be super interested to, hear from somebody who's practicing with couples, like at what point do you kind of realize maybe because some couples come to therapy and things have gotten really bad, but they're able to tap into that initial connection and really reestablish everything. But then other couples are not able to do that. And so I'm just kind of curious, how that's negotiated or worked with, when maybe
Yeah.
separation is best.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll speak on that question just, a little bit here, but I can definitely incorporate that. That's a really good idea. I made a note of it. But I think the biggest thing at the very onset of couples therapy, we're assessing for IPV, all those types of things. So if there's contraindication for treatment, it's an unsafe, unsecure environment, then we are going to separate, at least in a therapy sense. We're going to talk about how, we get to a safe environment. Does that include separation very, very early on? So there's that case
Mhm.
scenario. But I feel like your question is probably more for this one where, you're working with a couple, maybe they've made some gains, but then maybe they come back and it's like, "Oh, maybe this isn't a great relationship. Maybe you're not getting the things you need out of couples therapy." And it's actually funny you asked that question because I've got a couple right now where we're kind of in that zone.
Oh,
So, some of the things I feel like, so that's discernment counseling, is should we stay or should we leave the relationship? And some of the, I guess, I don't know. I feel like the word trigger is overused, but I guess some of the things that, initiate me to go into more of a discernment counseling than, marriage counseling is somebody disengaged in the relationship, and not disengaged like I'm upset, like I am having my emotions kind of make me want to step away. It's, do I have no positive or negative feelings? Am I indifferent? Do I just not care? So if there's any positive or negative feelings, I feel like those are wounds that can be worked through, even if it's anger. Like, I feel like if there's the positive or negative emotions there, that's something that we can still be working towards. Obviously, if it's not a threat to safety or security, but if there is
Mhm.
indifference, then maybe that's when I start to talk about, like, what are we doing? Like, are we staying? Do we need to go because we don't have any feelings about the relationship? Those four horsemen, if I see a lot of criticism, contempt, stonewalling, defense, and no active working on those, none of that, that's usually where I'll say, hey, you're not nice to each other, basically, in short words. It's basically what it is. But those are the two biggest things for me, is that disengagement, the indifference versus positive or negative sentiments, and the four horsemen. And those are what I use. Um, and just overall, it's very similar to like infidelity. I do love to work with couples who are trying to overcome infidelity, or even just any kind of abuse. And that is like, I do these four aspects of when I know it's indicated. Obviously, is it situational or intimate partner terrorism? If it's situational, are we accepting, like, this is what went on? Are we agreeing that this is what went on and how it went on? Are we having that willingness to change? And I don't know why I'm blanking on my fourth one, but if we're talking about the relationship sense, are we agreeing on the meaning of the relationship? Do we want the same things, meaning wise, goal wise? They're completely different. Maybe we need to highlight that.
Yeah.
Are we accepting, our individual roles and the problems and how they're being maintained? If we're not, one partner is just like, I have no portion of this, not realistic. I
Yeah.
have a conversation there. And then do we have a willingness? Like, are we trying? My favorite
Yeah.
thing is, hey, you haven't ever done homework or read anything or worked on anything that I have. So why do you keep coming back? I say that often. And so if that's habitual, and even if one partner is doing a lot of work and one isn't, just those things. So I hope at least that brief answer was a little helpful, but I'll look into some more things that I can add to next week, or 2 weeks
Yeah.
presentation
Yeah.
that can go a
No,
little
and
more thorough.
that's good. It gives a good start,
Yeah.
it's it's just so interesting to see how a couple can be in such a bad place,
Hmm.
and but there is plenty of sentiment still there, so they're arguing
Hmm.
and they're fighting it out, so you have something to work with. But if they're
Right.
just really shut down, that
Hmm.
I can see how that would be, you know,
Yep.
not a good sign. So
Yep. And that's, I guess, the majority of what it is. Like, if they're having, I mean, this is a figure of speech, not literally, knockout dragouts. If
yeah,
we're having overwhelming anger, I always say there's something there. There's something that we can work on. We're engaging in some way. There's a negative interaction cycle that, can be acknowledged. We can work on, make them feel better. But if there's no positive, no negative, we got nothing to work with.
yeah,
And that's really, really hard. It's probably, I'm writing a paper on emotional disengagement right now, and it's the biggest indicator of the relationship death, that, stonewalling, indifference, it's the hardest thing to come back from. It's one of
yeah.
the things that couples therapists hate to treat the most, all that icky
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Do you find that it's connected to just a loss of hope? Like a loss of hope,
Yep.
thinking that this can't get better at all?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I see it a lot with clients who was originally, like, if we're talking EFT interaction styles, like a pursuer, someone who's like, we need to fix this, we need to fix this, putting in a lot of work. And once that pursuer hits burnout, and I usually see that indifference coming in there a lot. Or if it's, in the cycle of violence, it's just happened over and over. Maybe this is the nth relationship that violence has occurred, then I think I see it like, I deserve this. And so that it's almost like an emotional suppression as a defense mechanism, basically, is
Yeah,
how it's playing out.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they do care, but it's like just a mask of like,
Mm-hmm.
what's, even if I try, it's not gonna change or whatever.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, I ran everyone off with the questions. I don't know if you can see in the chat, they said, "Thank you for the training. Thank you. It's helpful." So,
Love it.
yeah. Oh, there is
Yeah,
still
it's a
one
hard
person
topic.
on. Yeah, yeah. So, thank you so much for the
Yeah.
last person. Courtney, thanks for being here. And thank you,
Yeah.
Kathryn. I think, yeah, so the next one's in December and we'll keep sharing it. And, we had a
Beautiful.
little less people today, but that's understandable since everybody's getting back
Yeah.
to work.
Right?
So, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much again. And
Of
we'll,
course. Of course.
see you for the next one.
Sounds perfect. I'll see you then.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.